I have come all the way into the outer regions of the park to film a video because it's just so much nicer here than in my flat. But now I'm actually beginning to feel a little cold in the shade. It is autumn after all, meteorologically. So, and also I have to say I'm feeling a little bit inhibited out here. And I've already startled one woodpecker and probably some owls in the trees around here. So I think I'm just going to go home again to film the video. However, I wanted to show you the view first. Can you hear the woodpecker? Probably not. There's a dog. More dogs. This park is full of patches of trees with clear areas in between. It's really nice. I'm going to go out into the sun again now. Okay, this is much better. So this is going to be the first of two wrap-up videos of all the books that I have read since the end of July, except for the two books by Colson Whitehead that I have already reviewed in a separate video. So August was declared Agatha August by the Bookish Land, which I will link down below. A whole month dedicated to Agatha Christie, to reading her works, to reading about her, to watching adaptations of her works. And I was sort of a casual participant in that. I didn't want to spend too much time on Agatha Christie, but I did end up reading 3 of her novels, which is not too bad, I guess. At the beginning of June, I read The Murder at the Vicarage, the first Miss Marple book, and I enjoyed that surprisingly much, so I thought I'd stick with the Miss Marple books. The first one that I picked up is one of Agatha Christie's most famous novels, I think, 450 from Paddington. In this book, Miss Marple's friend, Mrs. McGillicuddy, witnesses a murder one afternoon on the train on her way from London. Another train runs parallel to hers for a few seconds, and she sees a man in the other train who has his back to the window strangle a woman to death. And then the trains part ways, and Mrs. McGillicuddy informs the conductor, and the police is also informed, but when no body is found later on any train or anywhere really, the matter is dropped. The only person who is convinced that Mrs. McGillicuddy is not in fact crazy is Miss Marple, of course, and the two old ladies take matters into their own hands. They narrow down on which train the murder must have taken place, and if the body was dropped from the train through the train window, they narrow it down to more or less the exact spot on which the body was dropped, and find out that it is on the grounds of a manor house. And Miss Marple enlists the aid of a young friend of hers who secures the position of a maid in that household. You have to suspend your disbelief really hard there. But it opens the door to an interesting investigation, and a lot of confusing things happen in the house. What I really liked about this book is that Agatha Christie keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time, and you never know where to place your trust and where to place your suspicion. There isn't really much more to say, just that I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The second book that I picked up is also a Miss Marple one, The Body in the Library. As the title might suggest, a body is found in a library in St. Mary Mead, namely the body of a young woman in the private library of Mr. and Mrs. Bantry in their house, and nobody knows who she is and how she got there and who got her there. The police blunder about as usual, so Miss Marple jumps in to put them back on the right track several times. I have to say I didn't really like this book. I found the solution unbelievable. The length to which the murderer went to achieve their goal and the amount of chance that was left in the murderer's scheme was just over the top, and I didn't buy it. Another thing that rubbed me the wrong way is this book. A large part of this book takes place in the show business milieu, or what passes as show business in the country. And the depiction of the people in the showbiz, especially women, was just so snobbish, especially coming from an upper middle class woman like Agatha Christie. It just didn't sit very well with me. So yeah, overall, not a book that I would recommend. And the third book that I read is one of the standalones, Endless Night. This one had the same weakness as The Body in the Library. I didn't really believe that the murderer's scheme would have worked. There was just too much room for chance in it. Nonetheless, I found this much more enjoyable than The Body in the Library because it is a very amusing variation on the Gothic novel. In this novel, the house, the big house that is at the center of the Gothic novel, has yet to be built. The narrator of this book has always had the dream to live in a large house designed by an architect friend of his. And his brand new wife happens to be rich and acquires a piece of land for them to build this house. Now, the problem is that the piece of land called Gypsy's Acre is cursed, and that all its owners come to a terrible and violent end. The narrator and his wife don't heed all the warnings that they get or the neighbors' attempt at driving them off the land, and then tragedy actually does strike. I won't say any more than that, just that I liked the creepy atmosphere and the Gothic novel vibes and also the character voice, and I think it's a very interesting book to read. So that was my Agatha August. And then July and August were very busy, very stressful months at work for me. So I was looking for something to read that wouldn't demand too much brain power, but would still be very immersive. And what better for that than science fiction and fantasy, especially science fiction and fantasy novellas. So I acquired a few of those. Most of them were from Tor. And I just want to take a minute here to give kudos to Tor for continuing to not put digital rights management on their ebooks. Because that means when I buy an ebook from the publisher Tor, I actually get full legal ownership rights of the file, as opposed to just the license to read. Isn't that nice? It also means that although I have a Kindle, I can buy an ebook from Tor from another shop than Amazon and convert it legally and without any problems to the Kindle format and read it on my Kindle. So thanks Tor for supporting indie bookshops this way. That said, I'm afraid the whole novella binge project wasn't really very successful. I read, let's see, God's Monsters and the Lucky Peach by Kelly Robson, Acadie by Dave Hutchinson, Envy of Angels by Matt Wallace, The Black God's Drums by P. Jelly Clark, and Nine Goblins by T. Kingfisher, aka Ursula Vernon. This last one is the only one that's not from Tor. And I have to say, I disliked all of them. I thought they were either badly written, or at least the world building was done in a bad or clumsy and unconvincing way. Or I thought that the story was really, if not formulaic, because formularity isn't always a problem, but it was most of the time a very straightforward plot from point A to point B, and nothing really surprising happened in between. Or in some cases, it was a combination of both of them. So I don't even want to spend much time on reviewing each of these novellas separately. There was one other, though, that I did end up liking, or at least not disliking much. It didn't fully convince me either, but at least it had a very, very, very interesting premise. It was Buffalo Soldier by Maurice Broaddus. This is a steampunk western about a rather mysterious boy and a secret agent who was tasked with the role of this boy's warden by the government of their homeland, Jamaica. Jamaica is in the steampunk era already an independent nation. The boy and the secret agent have escaped some sort of scheme around the boy and are now on the run from their own government. but also from various other people who want to get their hands on the boy. They have escaped to North America and they mean to make their way north, probably as far as Canada. The setting is one of the main interesting aspects about the book because it is an alternate history. Of course, steampunk is always alternate history, but in this case, the United States do not exist the way we know them. Independence from the British Crown has led to the birth of several states on the territory of the former colonies. Several different states with very different political and social makeups. Another huge plus point, the main plus point of the book, is the nature of the mysterious boy, which is revealed about halfway through the book, and is something that I would never ever in a million years have guessed. It is so far out there and also a bit timey-wimey, if you know what I mean. It is difficult to talk about what the book is about without spoiling it and without talking about the nature of the boy. So I can't say very much, only that the book is to a large degree about the power of stories. Maybe a bit too much, at least I feel that way, because throughout the book, the boy is being told stories, goodnight stories mostly. And I didn't always see the relevance of these stories to the message of the book. Perhaps I am at fault here because I didn't read the stories attentively enough. Think that I'm going to reread this novella in the future and make sure. I just want to say, if you are at all interested in this kind of thing, fantasy novellas and steampunk fantasy, I would highly, highly recommend this novella. If only for the reveal of what this mysterious boy is all about. I would recommend it for that moment alone. So that's it for today. It is getting dark again, sorry. And I have miles to go before I sleep, literally. I will see you in a couple of days at the latest with the second part of this wrap up. Bye.